more than 5 million job opportunities in huge projects.
To shed light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mostafa Wally, our economic expert. Dr. Wally, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Sir, how do you see the significance of Cairo's participation in the Dakar summit?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
You hear me?
Yes, I do hear you properly.
Thank you. To us, first of all, I think and I hope it was a successful visit because always when it comes to Africa, Egypt must have its own role strongly and friendly with all our friends and brothers in Africa. That's important, and that always will pay back us for the benefit of any of African countries with us here in Egypt.
Yes.
The importance of such a visit is that, or such a meeting, it's on high level, and it's just for it's for fostering the relation in the most important way, which is helping each other to achieve the goals of development, which even is set now by the United Nations, which means that Africa is in the process of developing daily and trying to forget the past of problems and a lot of hassles which was affecting the development march of Africa at large. And Egypt is having its own role in this and appreciated by most, if not all, African countries where we have been dealing with all over the year, across the years, not only now.
Yes. Dr. Wally, actually, Cairo said its participation is focusing on ways to develop the infrastructure in the African continent. How would you list Africa's infrastructure needs here?
In this case, I think even the President, His Excellency President of Senegal, in this meeting, he was referring to the development which they have witnessed or they know about, which was taking place up till this moment in Egypt. And that in itself is a good reference for the robust situation where Egypt can help and the strong help which it can offer to its neighbor friends in Africa. And infrastructure is actually the most important thing for any developing country. And Africa itself is still, and it is, a developing continent. So if we go to each country of this of Africa, it is in a process of developing its infrastructure. And that's the most, because you cannot build on anything a future and the real development unless you have the infrastructure. And now we all know what's infrastructure. It goes now everybody knows the infrastructure.
Yes. Sir, how, from your point of view, can Africa provide the finances in order to develop these infrastructures?
Well, let's get that first of all for each country. Once it's a country and it's now recognized, all Africa now is all the countries in Africa now are independent countries for a long time. They have their sovereignty, and of course, as a country, each country has at least its resources, to help its people to draw on it for development. So that's very important. Each African country must rely, first of all, use to the maximum its resources and maximize its resources. And meanwhile, I am always saying this actually, and I've witnessed conferences all over, in Europe and in other places, where of course the most important thing that Europe must pay back for Africa, not because it's compensation, because it is a fact. And a lot of people and a lot of programs are put there in the international institutions of Africa and even United Nations institutions. And the World Bank and the IMF are taking care of this point. So I think. But the most important thing is how to be supplied and to be submitted to help the African countries in the right time, in the right place, with the right intention. I mean, with
Yes.
the good intention and good faith.
Yes.
That I think, and soon, I mean, in no time, Africa can be robust and be, you know, a big and viable and prosperous continent in each of
Yes.
its countries.
What international financial institutions are showing interest in contributing to Africa's development, sir?
You mean what?
What international financial institutions here are showing interest in contribution?
I mean, I have seen before
Yes.
and up till now, I mean, the most important two institutions, of course, are
Yes.
the IMF and the World Bank.
Yes.
That's the most important, the most capable.
Indeed.
But there are a lot of bilateral relations, and even in Africa itself, there is some institutions through the African Unity, African Unity Organization of African Unity. Those are keen, most important of the total African work together. I mean, through economic and financial and political cooperation is the development issue. And
Yes.
I think the African Development Bank is a very, very successful story when it comes to the African continent, as keen about and interested in helping African countries.
Yes. Here, sir, what fields of investment draw the foreign investments in Africa?
Sorry, I couldn't hear this.
What fields of investments draw foreign investments in the African continent?
The investment level, or what you said?
Yes.
Well, we can say. I mean, if it's sufficient, if it's okay, this could be your question about.
Yes.
Is it sufficient? Is it what is needed?
What domains here to attract the investors?
The domains.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, infrastructure again. That's essential. If you mean, I hope I understood your question.
Yes. Doctor, what African countries do you expect to attract more foreign direct investments on the short term?
Well, this is you cannot tell exactly, but
Yes.
for sure, you know, those countries who have proved that they have developed a certain level of cooperation and a certain level of ensuring a viable infrastructure to build on it for higher structure. I mean, for when it comes, for example, some African countries still need, because, you know, they are, you know, what you call inland. They have no shores. I mean, they are in need for railroads. They are in need for transport. These are of course, they are in need for this. This is not yet finished in many countries, especially in the middle of Africa.
Yes.
And a lot of the infrastructure projects actually is needed in Africa. And of course, such infrastructure projects cost hell of money. You know, it is very expensive. I mean, especially now. But anyway, generally there is development in Africa.
Yeah.
At least, alhamdulillah, we can say that the worst of you know, the internal fights in Africa is now reduced to hopefully to be zero. I mean, that's very important. I mean, the internal fights, you know, and conflict in African countries between each other or within African countries itself. That's important thing, you know, because this is against the development. So when you get rid of it, then that's positively raise you the chance of development in Africa.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Mostafa Wally, our economic expert, thank you so much for your precious input. And during a visit to South Sudan, Vatican's Pope Francis implored the country's leaders to end the bloodshed and discrimination. South Sudan broke away from Sudan to become independent in 2011 after decades of conflict, but civil war erupted in 2013. Despite the 2018 peace deal between the two main antagonists, violence and hunger still plague the country.
Began his